A wise philosopher once wrote, "Technology is at its best when it brings us together." And thus, over the course of our brief history on this tiny planet, we have seen great works of innovation erupt from a blank canvas to bring us astonishing works of progress that bind humanity together. Fire, water, earth.
Wait, stop. Jared, you're totally doing the Last Airbender intro.
So sorry, Zach. Where was I? Fire, wheels, the printing press, electricity, Pop-Tarts, the quesadilla maker.
You're getting off topic again.
Flight, the internet. And behind these creations were gifted minds risking everything to drive our species forward, bringing creativity and courage to build new worlds we never thought possible. And yet, despite this lineage, the world found itself without but a decade ago. In need of cutting-edge ideas,
Stop. Jared, I see where you're going with this. You really think tabletop puzzle narratives and at-home escape games are humanity's defining advancement over the last 10 years?
Well, yeah.
Oh, okay. I can roll with that. In need of cutting-edge ideas, a few brave souls risked everything to combine two worlds that once existed galaxies apart. Fusing classic escape room sensibilities with traditional board game elements, these radicals blazed a new path in which many would follow. Unbeknownst heroes, whose creations brought joy and fellowship to many when the darkness of yesteryear seemed too thick. Who are these puzzling pioneers? These groundbreaking gurus of wit and wizardry? Well, you're about to find out.
We're fortunate enough to have some amazing designers and creators with us today who all make at-home immersive games and experience. Let's meet our panel today.
Hi, I'm Silvano from Italy, from Giochi.
Nick.
I'm Rebecca.
We're from BlueMatter Games.
I'm Angela Scott. I'm one half of Cravotta Mysteries.
Hi, it's Anna. And I'm Lisa of Scarlet and Bleau.
Hi, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Yacine, and we're from Society of Curiosities.
Well, we are super excited today to be talking with all of you. Usually we do this in a one-on-one setting, but to have a group panel here at Recon is quite an honor. And first, I want to have a brief conversation with Nick and Rebecca and Silvano. You guys were there before the rest of us were. And we need a little schooling in the history of how this all came together. Let's start with Nick and Rebecca. How did this come to be?
Where Stargazer's Manor came in, it actually all started with the pocket knife.
Yeah, it's funny, like what sparks the idea, or that's what sold it for us, is we made this like crazy pocket knife that was articulated, and they were very excited about that, and it never made it into the final game. So it's kind of, you're like.
But it was the idea of manipulatives that a game could have, and a tabletop game could have a lot of manipulatives. I think Dr. Gravely's retreat has 60 components that all have to be in the right spot. So it's a manufacturing nightmare. I mean, they've done an incredible job getting everything where it needs to go. There's even some disentanglements. There's a lot that.
But it was, I think, a labor of love, though, because Y is a big fan.
Wyatt Longshore, the manufacturer, wanted to really make things happen. So it was a perfect storm of the idea of rising, the fact that the company that wanted to do it, and the factory that was capable of making it happen at the mass market at a price point that people could actually afford.
But it was because it was a passion project for them.
Mm-hmm. So Silvano, you were not far behind Nick and Rebecca when DV Games put out the very first Deckscape. What was going through your mind? Because you've been making puzzles for a long time. What did it look like to you when it was just all starting out?
Yes, I've been working since the last millennial as a game creator for puzzles for magazines here in Italy. And the idea of a pocket escape room actually was copied from them because I played this one.
That's compliment, yes.
We inspire each other.
And I also played, of course, brick and mortar escape rooms and some video games like Professor Layton or the Flash escape rooms we have at the time. And we have the idea to create not a big box game, which was a nightmare to produce, as Nick and Rebecca said, but a simple card game. So our idea is to put the escape room in a box. We wanted to put it in a little box. And our idea with the escape is to create a game where each puzzle has a very free answer. You don't have a code wheel, you don't have an app, you don't have anything to check. You just choose your answer and check on the back if it's correct or not. If it's not correct, you will lose some minutes or points in the end. So this gives us a lot of freedom and makes us easy to create some puzzles that are very connected to the story. So the puzzle makes the story advance.
So Angela, if I'm not mistaken, you got in your start back in 2018. What were you seeing at like the time when you were kind of getting into the space? And then tell us about the like special group that helped you get to where you were today.
Well, I have only ever played one actual brick and mortar escape room in my life. And I'm up in Northern Michigan. There are not a lot of opportunities for that. My mother, my sister, my aunt, my brother, and I used to get together every Wednesday and play different games. July of 2018 came along and somebody suggested we do a Secret Santa exchange where everyone involved would create an original experience for another member of the group. We made what ended up being double major. I made 2 websites, fake emails, set up phone numbers, and this was all for one person. He absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, a couple of people had dropped out at the last minute and didn't end up sending a gift to somebody. So we quickly recreated a few more, put them together, sent them out, and people really liked it. So that was kind of the beginning.
I love it. Our newest members of this group who have gotten into the game most recently. I want to talk to Anna and Lisa real quick. So you guys got everything up on the Kickstarter 2020. Tell us what that is like.
Yeah, and like a lot of you guys here, we don't actually have a background of working with physical escape rooms. And Only playing. Yeah, we transitioned from players to creators. And I just want to say that, you know how people say that lack of knowledge is a dangerous thing? It is a really dangerous thing. Guys, if I actually knew how much work it would be, and especially the fact that we are a subscription format, we're not just separate experiences, we actually work with a 13 games long yearly subscription. Big mistake. No regrets. We love it. We're having, don't listen to her. We're having the time of our life. But it is a huge commitment and it's a huge challenge. So if you ask me, you know, how's it been? How's this first year on the market been?
I have no clue.
It's been such a wild ride. It's been so much work, but it's been very rewarding as well. And a lot of things, well, we do come from a content creation background, which helped us a lot. So it's not like, you know, we didn't know how to do anything and we learned on the way. No, not really. We are very comfortable with creating digital experiences, websites, voiceovers, videos. We also used to work a lot with print materials, and our games are escape rooms in envelopes. And we went to Kickstarter I think I was more confident than I am right now, because the industry bloomed so much throughout this year and we got to learn so many things and we got to connect with so many amazing creators that are just doing this mind-blowing things that now we realize that we actually, you know, don't know anything. But yeah, it's been fun for sure.
So for Michelle and Yacine, so you guys were escape room designers and creators before you came to the at-home space. So can you talk about kind of some of the trade-offs are between live escape room experiences and at-home games?
Yes. So
That's cute.
The main differences between designing brick and mortar physical escape rooms, I'd say, are the time constraint, how linear you want it to be, because at home experiences, you assume a smaller group. In person, you assume maybe a larger group and you have to keep everyone busy at the same time. And then the depth of storytelling that you can do at home. The world can be much larger. There's a little more room for exposition where you can tell more of a story.
Yeah, and with a larger world, you have to really constrain your players, because once you let them know, you might have to look for a website or you might have to do a phone call. All of a sudden they're calling random numbers they find, or they're digging holes really deep where they shouldn't be digging holes. So your job becomes much harder to constrain your player while giving them a bigger space to explore in. And then also, in an escape room, you have your game master. So we used to give little hints along the way. And so we could help people know when they had kind of veered off track. But when you have a tabletop escape game, you don't have that mechanism as easily to get your players back. You don't have as much hands-on control of how a game works out.
Let's let everybody out there know what is available to them in the at-home world. I want to stay away from online live avatar games because that's kind of its own world. But let's talk about the different nuances of different styles of games that they can play.
If you can think of it, if you're looking for something now in an at-home game, it's probably out there. It is so hard as a creator to come up with something new and original. It's still happening, and it's really exciting when you play a game that has something. It's a lot more exciting when you come up with it yourself, but there's so much. And I think it's a really good thing for players because there's no need to play games that are okay. For us creators, I think that has really pushed us to be better, not just in our stories or our puzzles, but I think the big thing is the customer service.
What we've run into, for instance, when the Dollhouse came out with Think Fun, it was a very immersive experience, but we had to actually backstep pretty quickly because, Think Fun wanted hard. And then all of a sudden they realized that the market was not ready for that kind of hard for mainstream.
Yeah, and I think it also matters too is whether you're specialty or mass. So we focus on mass market and companies are wanting to sell 100,000 units, which means we're having 300, 500,000 people play a game. That's a whole that's a wide spectrum of player. So how do we pick puzzles and when we have to hit that wide a mark? And we run into that problem a lot, that it's really challenging to, this reviewer said it was intermediate, this one said it was too hard, this one said it was easy. These players got confused because we have a new dynamic. There's also the challenge too, Angela, you brought up that there's, everything's been done, but the question is, can it be done at a certain price point to a certain market? We get about $2.25 to put into a box. So even though there's 60 components, they had to cost $2.25. And on the mass market, they can get stuff a lot less expensive. So, it doesn't have to sell for $60 and the inventor only makes $5 on that. But it's a different battle. It's again, when that 100,000 people say, 50,000 of them say, I just don't get it. And wow, it's
But actually what's really cool as far as mass goes, mass is looking for the next experience. So the world is ready for experiences. So even though you feel like it's already been done, I feel like we're just scratching the surface because it's like, what does experience mean?
A lot of creators, myself included, used to like both escape rooms and deduction game, detective game. So I think they are all part of the same family of games, probably treasure hunts, etc. And also you can see different publishers going in waves. They create a lot of escape rooms at the same time, and then came the detective games at the same time. It looks like everyone is copying from the others, but I actually think it's ideas that are in the air, and you think, oh, if this worked, maybe people want to try also this.
Your discussions made me think about how many types of games, like Angela said, are offered to anyone who wants to jump into this. You know, it's really cool. Like there's people who like to assemble physical puzzles. You can actually do a puzzle and then solve a mystery based on a puzzle. If you want to really be immersed and you really care about stories, there's games that you can get that have pages and pages of story for you to really get in there. If you want tactile things that feel real, there's games like that out there. It's really fun to see how many people are jumping in and how many ways they're taking it, and how they're taking different genres that have a pretty good following, because our market's interesting. It's escape room adjacent, but not all escape room players want to play it. It's board game adjacent, but not all board game players want to play it. And it's hard to tell people, you want to be here, you want this, there's going to be a game for you. So it's interesting to see how people are taking things like puzzles and pulling people in with a puzzle, or taking people, there's a game out there that does like a journaling activity. So take people who are interested in journaling and get them into a puzzle. So it's really interesting to see how people are finding different ways of getting different people into this genre. And then the other thing that we have to tackle as an industry, I think, is how to label games, how to say this game is for you. We use things like immersive, and it doesn't mean much, because immersive could be 10 pages of writing, or it could be tangible items and websites or something. Or like what Rebecca said, like easy and hard and reviews. We all have such subjective standards for what's easy, what's hard. Is it that it's an unsolvable puzzle and that's why it's hard? Or is that it's a multi-step puzzle and that's why it's hard? So the more we can come together as an industry and have vocabulary that we can use in common, I think it's going to be easier for players to choose the right game for them. Because, I mean, even all of us, we have games that we love and we have games that we don't love, because we all have special preferences in what we like in a game. So I think that's some room for growth, because we want people to love what we do. We all want that, but we need the right people to play who will love what we do.
There have been quite a few threads lately in the groups about how we explain what we do to civilians. How do we explain what our games are? And the threads are funny. I mean, it's a play-at-home, immersive, interactive puzzle adventure that you're involved in. I mean, I think there is something out there for everyone, and it's our job to describe it so they know they want it.
There's a special field of science for that. It's called marketing. And I'm joking, but I'm not joking. Is that we usually start with the back of the box. Are people going to be not seller? Are the people who are going to love it be able to find it?
Yeah.
And that's the difference between selling 5 copies, 500, 5,000, enough to stay in business.
But I think that we're really fortunate that there are so many of us and we all support each other. Every time one of us finds some success, we all benefit from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. This industry is so different compared to the industries we got to work with before. We come from the marketing industry, and it's very competitive. And everyone keeps mentioning that this is competitive right now. I don't actually honestly agree with this, because the competition we have is different in its core. The players we have would rather play as many awesome experiences as they can, instead of really actually choose from great experiences that are in front of them. Usually the thought process is not, should I play game A, B, or C, but rather, should I play A, B, or C now and play, maybe I play A, but I'll play B and C later, which is, which totally works for us. If we're thinking just business and numbers and money, it's fine if they play later, as long as they're interested and they stay connected. And from our experience, from what we see, the enthusiasts are just playing all of it. And that blows my mind, honestly. But it's like board games in a way, not entirely, but in a way. You don't want to just have one board game. You usually, if you're an enthusiast, you don't even want to have 3 board games.
So like escape rooms.
Yeah, and like escape rooms, you want to play all of them.
Yeah, Silvano's background there.
I think to what you just said, Anna, is the competition is with other forms of entertainment. So we're competing against movies.
True.
And we're competing against books and game boards. And I mean, the movie is a good one because when Stargazer's Manor came out, it was one of the first disposable games, right? They called it a disposable game because it was a one-time play. It's not
People were
disposable.
like, what?
We made it so it could be regifted, but that it took a hit for that. And yet this is the same crowd that would go and spend $60 to take their family to a movie for that one-time experience instead of spending $25 for that one-time experience. So there's a training of the market. There's the competition against the other forms and then training them. And then each time we add an innovation, the market chokes on that as well as it tries to figure out, oh, what is that? Oh, that's weird. Wait, it's really cool. Okay, more.
Yeah. With recon and everything else that's kind of adjacent to us, right? Immersion is a big word, however you want to mean it. But one of the questions we want to ask you guys, and anyone can answer, is what does immersion mean to you and how do you make your games immersive?
A story.
Yeah.
For me, that's a story.
Yeah, I would also say it's about the narrative. It's not so much about the puzzles we have. The puzzles, of course, they make a difference too, but it's all about the story. And if you can do the storytelling brilliantly, I think you got it. The immersion is going to be there.
We play games with no puzzles. Just logic.
You feel connected with the characters that are part of the story, and you feel emotions when you're reading the story or you get in the story playing with certain artifacts and components, and it all just comes together and you understand, oh, this is what the characters went through and this is what they felt at the moment. And I think that's when the immersion happens.
I look at immersion as if I forget that I'm at a table and if I just forget that I'm in my body. And then there's a way of testing that is to see how people react. So one of our recent ones out is Break-In Area 51. And people don't talk about a puzzle with an alien. They talk about how they have to do an alien autopsy and shove their finger inside an alien's body. That's immersive. That's when they describe it to their friends and say, I had to touch alien guts. Can't beat that. You were in there.
What's that one? I got to write that down.
Break-In Area 51.
How big is your list of games to play?
What we chose to do with our games is we make the players a character in the narrative. So we assign them a role, and they're doing it from home as a consultant of sorts. But it removes a lot of the barrier for suspension of disbelief. Another thing we do is our games take place in the real world with some tweaks. So it's in the alternate reality game genre, which also makes immersion easier or more likely that people will buy in.
I think with escape rooms and with these tabletop games, you have to get people to buy in first, and then you have a little more leeway in the middle. Like if you have to stretch things a bit, you can once they're fully bought in. And if possible, you don't stretch things. But if you have to, because of whatever constraints you have, you have to have them fully bought in, so they're not questioning everything from the beginning. And there's a huge question of how do you build player trust in your game, because trust can be so easily broken that you don't want to start your game with people saying, oh, I don't know about this. Like you really have to get them to trust what you're doing, trust the process, trust the puzzles, and then they'll be more likely to kind of fall into that immersion.
Going back to an earlier conversation that we asked Michelle and Yacine, is we're talking about all of these things that are very unique to the at-home world. And I want to juxtapose it a little bit against the escape room, because I want our escape room crowd out there to know that there are some things that we can do sometimes a little bit better, a little differently because of our format. Mm-hmm. What are those things, you guys? What are we winning over for our escape room players that are listening to say like, hey, come into our world because we can do what?
You can drink while you play. That's an easy one.
And then you have people that encourage the drinking by, throwing a recipe, little cocktails in there. And to me, that is part of the immersion. And it's special. It's distinct to that game. I think it's fun.
I think one of the escape room joys that people will find in the at-home games is the big reveal. So in a physical escape room, it's very often opening a secret passage and going into a new room. And a lot of games at home will have gated envelopes or boxes that you can't open right away, but at that point you're in the story and you get the big reveal and the story evolves from there. Some have other mechanisms to hide information that you're going to discover it, and people are getting really clever with them, and you will get those big reveals. It's a lot of fun.
Players choose their own pace. You want lots of hints. Get lots of hints. If you don't want to take any penalties, I hate the penalties. I'm like, you just made that beeping sound that annoys me. I'm just having fun. I don't want to keep score, but some people do want to keep score. So it's great. You get to choose. Do you want score? Do you not? Do you want to compete? Do you want to just have a friendly game? Do you guys want to take a break? We'll go make a new appetizer and then we'll come back in 3 minutes. You guys keep going on to pour the new drinks or however that is. We choose the circumstances.
And they're not here with us, but Enigma Fellowship actually, in their games, you get to a point where they're basically saying, you've been sitting here so long. Go outside, get some vitamin D,
I think we get an accessible variety.
When you guys ask what we want our players to do when they open the game, for us it's when they open the envelope. I just want them to vibe with the world we created, with the atmosphere. And our thing is that we're not creating one story that's separated by separate envelopes. We're actually creating new worlds every time. So it's either sci-fi or like 60s noir kind of detective, or it's some kind of medieval time themed story. And we create immersive playlists with music because, again, that's how I imagine them play, they just vibe. They open it, they're like, oh my God, there's like an ancient scroll, some kind of a dragon themed item, some kind of a weird crystal little paper thing, like what's going on? And there's this tavern music on the background. Maybe they get in some Witcher vibes, maybe some kind of Skyrim vibes. I don't know what they're into, but there is this flexibility of that's really their imagination of working with what we're offering them. So I hope that's what's going on when they open the game and they immerse. That's again this buzzword, immersion.
And one thing we have as a tabletop creators is a lot of freedom, because we are writing something that looks similar to books or comics, meaning we can write anything. I can say you exit the prison and you find a spaceship there filled with dinosaurs and robots. I cannot do this with a brick and mortar escape room because we have to build everything. But you can choose to create your story as you go as an author, and you have fun creating the story. While if you have a brick and mortar escape room, sometimes you have to adapt the story to the physical space. So I envy a lot of things from brick and mortar escape rooms, but we have the freedom.
Whenever I go to a brick and mortar one, I'm always feeling like I'm missing like half of the experience, because there's always somebody in the back corner who figured the thing out. So I almost have like this panicky feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm missing half this experience. And I don't think you have that quite in the same way when it's in a box. They each of them have different strengths, certainly, because brick and mortar is pretty exciting, but I do feel like I miss a lot.
I mean, when I said right off that I have only played one escape room, brick and mortar escape room, it's not because I don't want to, it's because they're just not available in my area. And it can't just be me. So there've got to be other people out there that are enjoying these games that we're all putting out, that either have played a couple or have played none, but they're getting to play these games. And I think that it excites them that should they now vacation somewhere and there are escape room options, they're going to want to do it. Where before they might not have even been aware that this was an option.
I wanted to bring up a formal concept that we use, and that's called the contract. And when somebody opens the box, we create a contract with the players as to what we're going to deliver, and just set up the expectations, and then we have to deliver on them. And it allows us to do things like have the spaceship or the dinosaurs show up because we set those rules up. And actually we're seeing a shift away from the escape room genre on our games, because people come from the rooms and they expect, well, where's the person talking to me? And where's the timer? And where's this? And where's this? Like, we're not an escape room like that. We're a different experience, and people bring those expectations and break the game because they're not open to the contract we're offering. So we're finding there's more of a movement towards immersive gaming rather than calling everything an escape room. Just so we can recalibrate what expectations are.
No, and I agree with that. I mean, we don't use escape room when we're trying. I mean, we use 1,000 other words, but we don't use escape room in trying to explain what it is we're creating.
Well, I'll give an example is hints are a bad word. Right? Everybody thinks hints are terrible, and it's like, well,
we're trying to change that.
We're trying to change that. If we put a puzzle in that you guys don't like, take the hints.
Or no, it's not that you don't like, that you're not
Well,
getting.
you don't get, and so the hints are a way to keep the experience from where that's what we're trying to pitch, is that hints are when the game is getting a little slow, take a hint and keep the momentum going. Choose your pace. But a lot of players think, no, if I take a hint, I have failed. I have not min-maxed the game. As my son says, humans are really good at min-maxing the fun out of everything.
Yeah, so we when we did our hint site for Soup, my goal was to make it feel like it was just part of the narrative, just part of the story. You're not getting a hint, you're just moving on in the story. And I've had numerous people say that whether they took a hint or not, they went back and read them all because they were relevant to the story. It's good to hear because that was totally our goal. And I think when we have brick and mortar escape room people kind of jumping the fence on getting into our games, they do bring that with them, that it's this taboo.
One of the things you guys brought up a lot, or you mentioned, was narrative as an item that you can explore more in the at-home space. So with more opportunities to put in narrative in the at-home space, what's the difficulty that you kind of run in with it, right? So how does the narrative or the immersion part play with the puzzling and how they can kind of work with each other or kind of go against each other? And how does that kind of play into it?
What we find a lot is that when people go into their puzzling brain, they sometimes lose track of the narrative. It's really easy to just be... all the escape room people probably see this in escape rooms. Like, you go in and people are looking for numbers. There's no reason to be looking for numbers, but they're like, I see a number. It's got to be something, right? And we see that in a game. So instead of letting us take over, instead of saying, we trust you, they're like, no, we're going to keep searching something and we're going to do this. But they're forgetting to listen to the narrative. So maybe, I know Nick mentioned about retraining people, like training them that it's an experience. So I think we have to train people to pay attention to narrative. It doesn't come naturally to everyone. And especially when you're designing puzzles that link right into the narrative, it's especially important to train people. We see that with fairy tale files. There's a murder solving component. So people do really well in the puzzles. And then all of a sudden we say, well, who did it? And they forgot that whole part. So we have to work back. Oh, yeah. Angela's making faces. So we have to go back and say, well, how do we help people keep track of the story? How do we keep them in that narrative? And it's not always easy.
Definitely hard to find this balance. And I think the most challenging part, at least for me, when we're creating the game flow and trying to find this balance between puzzling part of the game and the narrative part of the game, the most challenging is to make the puzzles organic. I felt like the simplest narratives we had were the easiest to connect with the puzzles. And as soon as we had the game that was more narrative focused, and that was the Thieves game we created, so we already had some experience, and we went for a more of a deduction type of detective game. So yeah, people had to pay very close attention to detail, and it turned out to be really hard to create.
That was the fourth one.
No, Thieves, because I'm counting the game 0. Hello. Pay attention to details.
0, 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4.
Our games are starting from 0. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the game. People enjoy it. We get good positive feedback, but our more hardcore players also emailed us quite a lot just to let us know that they felt like the puzzles felt the least organic in this game. So they were fun. There was enough, puzzling gameplay. So they were satisfied, but they just felt like the puzzles were a little off. Like the items just didn't feel quite as immersive as in the simpler narratives. Yeah, it was hard to do. That was the challenge. And I feel like maybe it's not so much about the difficulty of the puzzles. It's really about if the narrative is really complicated, it's hard to keep the components just like feel relevant and real. Sometimes you just feel like, okay, there is no way I can make this feel organic. I have to throw in some kind of a Sudoku puzzle on this because I am dying. I'm joking, of course, but like not exaggerated right now. Everyone's judging right now.
No one's judging.
There's a lot of
Conversations happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're describing there, Anna, is pacing. And we just did a jigsaw-based game, and that's a 3-hour commitment just to do the jigsaw puzzle. So how much story, where do we interject the story? Where do we have all those pieces? We have no control over what part of the puzzle they're going to finish first, but how do you create an experience that works around that constraint?
When we started putting together Root of All Evil, we knew that game was going to succeed or fail based on the reading. That has a journal that is easily an hour and a half of reading. If the writing wasn't good, it was gonna flop. And one of the best reviews we got right off was David, where he said, "Yes, I read a journal, and I'm saying it right here. I enjoyed it." I mean, it was just like it was taboo or something. But that game, we, aside from knowing that the narrative was so important, we wanted it to be a game where the puzzles weren't necessary to play, to enjoy it. People could just enjoy the experience in itself without actually doing the puzzles. If they want a deeper, more in-depth experience, then do the puzzles. We've had people play it twice. Once through without doing the puzzles, going back through playing it again with the puzzles. So the narrative was the key.
I think we went the other way around, meaning we basically have no narrative aside from what happens in the puzzles. We have very few cards with the story, and everything you do is advanced through the puzzle. So in this way, it's you that made the story advance, but also probably because both me and Martino, my co-author, are not very good in writing compelling stories. So this is the way we make a compelling game, making you move the story, and we will probably not be able to write an interesting journal that someone will read from page 1 to last page, as Angela does.
We're finding that for most characters in our stories, we get about 6 lines of dialogue. And it's interesting to create a memorable character with just 6 lines of dialogue. And I find it actually a beautiful challenge, because if we had 300 lines of dialogue, that, we wouldn't be as careful. But for the stuff we're doing in the mass market, the tolerance is they don't want to read, they don't want to spend an hour, they don't want to spend 15 minutes reading.
I think for me, since she does the story, I do the puzzles. For me, the biggest challenge is to find a balance between the difficulty, actually. Because if it's too easy, it doesn't feel immersive. You go through it, you feel it's a game. You don't feel you're part of it. Mm-hmm. If it's too hard, then we have emails at like 2 a.m. People are like, how do I solve this? And they're clearly not playing because they're writing me an email. So that's the hard part of it. How to make it in balance so the person is in the story while actually doing puzzles.
All right, so we've talked about so far the beginning, where we all started from. We've came to where we're at now and kind of the things that we do well. Now let's go to the future. So let's talk about where we're going, right? So this is a question for everyone. With live in-person games kind of reopening, so like escape rooms, so on and so forth, what do you think is the trajectory of tabletop games?
I think it's going to get bigger, and I think it's going to get even more varied.
I think there was always introverts that would pay not to interact with other human beings. So
And play solo?
during COVID, they just found...
They were very comfortable.
Yeah.
They were in their happy place.
They found a lot more ways to play without this dreaded human interaction. So I think they would prefer to stay this way, even after COVID.
But I'll be honest, I'm a little, not scared, but I don't know what to expect exactly, because Scarlet Envelope started exactly when COVID hit. We were one of the first Kickstarters in puzzling community that, launched right at the same time when everything was locked down. I'm very hopeful that there's still going to be room for us. And I do feel like there's not going to be any room for okay games, like Angela said before. If maybe there is room right now and people are still it's fine. I can't go anywhere anyway. I can just play this game as well. It's not going to be this way anymore. So we will be under a little bit more pressure to create really great things. And it's a good thing, I feel like.
Yeah, I think we keep coming back to the fact that we have to sell these games as experiences. The hard part, and I think Jared and David had this conversation on the podcast, is getting these players to talk about it and share it with others. So a lot of the independent designers aren't fortunate to be on a shelf to have people say, I want this. And a lot of us probably won't be there anytime soon. So for the independent side, how do you get people to talk about your game and to bring it to more people? One interesting thing was that State of the Industry of the Escape Room that just came out. There were statistics that said that of the 677 escape rooms that were polled, almost 20% of those escape rooms created some type of play-at-home content, be it a mail order game or a print and play or a puzzle hunt. And that's huge. That's like 100, 130 something new games hitting the market. So what I see right now is a really fragmented market where people have played just the games they know about. And if they've been fortunate to join a Facebook group like Puzzle People, then they probably have a pile that's their height of games, but probably most people haven't. So they've played a few handful of the games of the escape rooms that they frequent or follow. So our job now is to get more people to hear about other games. So as creators, we might have to make a focused intent to say, I want to tell people, if you like our games, then these games are similar, you might like it. Or if you like this, maybe you like this. And especially be very explicit in telling people, you should tell people about if you like it, tell people about it so it grows, or invite someone over, or please repackage this up and give it to someone else, or sell it. So that way our games just get more known throughout the gaming industry.
And it's also difficult to review our games because these are one-shot, not spoilable experiences. So Puzzling Company is very good in reviewing games and giving some sort of details about it without spoiling anything. But most reviews on most magazines tell you something like, "Oh, this is a pirate escape room games. It has three very good puzzles. I cannot say anything. One with the jacket is very good." Okay. I have no idea if I will like it or not.
Well, and I'd love it if they didn't just say, I liked the puzzles, or that is actually useful, but it's when they say, I didn't like them, it's all, but what kind do you like? It's like a martial arts movie. It's terrible. It's really poorly acted. It's low budget. But was it good? They're all low budget and poorly acted, but was it a good one? And we're not getting people sharing that piece of it, that it was really hard in all the right ways. If you like logic puzzles, you'll love this one. If you like a lot of story, you'll love this one. I think many of the reviewers get too personal. They put themselves too much into it, and it's hard to extract what the product actually is.
I think this is something that might be changing in the future about how inventors and creators promote their games and how they're being reviewed. I think we may be, as an industry, too afraid of spoilers right now, but if you take movie previews as a barometer, they essentially give you the whole movie in 2 minutes, and it's up to you to stop the preview and say, okay, this looks good, I don't want to know more. So I think this is something that might change and that might make our games more appealing.
Tell us why you love making the games or for the at-home space, and then why the audience, around here that maybe not even know much about, the at-home space, why they should give us a try.
It's really fun to put out a lot of games and to keep mixing things up. We have the Society of Curiosities, but we're not tied to that. We can do other things, and it's fun to play. And it's also really fun to see your games go so many different places. Before, we were tied to the physical location, and we're on Kauai, Hawaii. So we have an island of 60,000 people plus visitors. We don't get much exposure, but now we get to share our games across the US, Canada, and across the world. So it feels really good to make something that people get to play and hopefully enjoy.
Well, I like designing these games because it's how we play together. And then also the incredible amount that I've learned about myself as well, because I used to think he was the puzzle guy. And then I went with him to a conference called Gathering for Gardner. And as a dyslexic, artsy type, what I realized is all these years, I always thought I was horrible at math and that kind of thing. And I was like, all these years I've been doing math in forms of art as tessellations and things like that. And so what it helped me do is kind of get out of my own way and dive down into puzzles and experiences that I really enjoy. And so it's helped me learn a lot about myself.
And just as a fun fact, when we got back from that conference, there were 14 books on tessellation waiting in our mailbox. For me, it's when I was 8 years old, this is the kind of game I wanted to play in the worst way. I couldn't find them. So I'm now designing these games for my 8-year-old self. We just delivered a game for 8-year-olds, which I can't talk about, but it was such a joy to play test and see young kids getting the experience that I so wanted to have myself, and just the joy. And we learned a ton from them too, just watching how they interacted. And that's what I love. I love challenging people and having them just enjoy their brains and their hearts.
Since Rebecca mentioned Martin Gardner, and Martin Gardner's puzzle were the first one I tried when I was a very young kid, because they were on American Scientific, I guess, which was also translated in Italy. So I found some of these puzzles, and I was hooked when I was, I think, 6 years old or something like that. So I think we all love puzzles, And one of the fun things of creating a tabletop escape room is that the work of creating a tabletop is a puzzle in itself, because you have no idea of how you will get alive at the end of the game. You start with nothing on your screen, and you have to create like 30 puzzles in our case that advance the story. And you think, I will never be able to do this, and each time you succeed and you feel great. So this is the fun part for you as a creator, and then you give the game to others and hope they will like it.
I think for me, I love a lot of things about this job. Even just the customer service makes me happy. Like, I love talking to these people. No, seriously, honest to God, it makes me happy. The people that are playing our games are so interesting. The way they screw up things, sometimes it's fascinating. The things that they enjoy, it's incredible to just hear this feedback and actually fully realize that they're talking about the thing that just used to be in your head. You know, if you didn't dedicate these hours into just creating it and bringing it to life, it wouldn't have existed at all. You just created something from scratch. This blows my mind. And when they reference the worlds that I built, when they reference the characters that I came up with and I gave them names, and it feels like, yeah.
Names are Kickstarter backers. Their mother gave them names. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, not all our characters are Kickstarter backers. Yeah, we had this. One of the rewards for the biggest pledge Kickstarter backers was the immersive writing. So we took their names and we created characters based on them. That's what she's talking about.
Saved us ton of work. Thank you.
They love it. Sometimes, you know, especially when they end up being like a murderer or like the really bad guy in the game. And we start referencing them, like we're kind of like we're becoming friends, because I know this guy. This is the bad guy from our sci-fi game kind of idea. It's amazing. I don't know. It just connects all of us, and we're still small enough to actually talk to these people ourselves. We don't have a customer service team yet. So we're learning a lot from them, and it's just pure fun. I'm really enjoying it.
My entire family, we grew up as big readers. I think that, at least in our case, reading a lot gives you an ability, I guess, to be a storyteller. But we've also had creative outlets, a lot of DIY, anything. This has given us a chance to do a lot of those things in our games. We're still very small. We don't see a Kickstarter in our future. We like that our games are very, very personalized. It gives us an opportunity, like Anna said, that since it's just us, two people, we wear every hat, and I enjoy working with customers that want to make something special for someone else. We'll get a call. I read about this. I really want to do this for my girlfriend, but can we do it this way? And I love that. I love working with them and knowing that we created something that not only that they enjoyed, but they enjoyed it enough to gift it to somebody else.
So for those of you that don't know, Zach and I, we are not creators. We thought about it once upon a time, but have found more of a love in supporting these wonderful people. But if you haven't heard the passion, if you haven't heard the dedication from this really diverse group of people, which only represent a fraction of this industry, believe me, you will not meet a more passionate, creative group of people out there pushing games directly to your door. Zach and I honestly believe this is the best kept secret in entertainment. And we view it as our goal week in, week out to talk about these games, which we love so much, in the hopes that more and more people will come, enjoy them, and that our creators will continue to get to make awesome content for you to experience. We're super thankful that they got to be a part of this today. We love you guys. Thank you for letting us getting to wrap up and host this panel for you all. It has been an honest pleasure.